everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Studio Tech Live. Now, things look a little bit different this week, and that's for a good reason. It's because I'm not Mark Johnson, and I'm Vance Willis. So this week's episode is episode number 108. So we're well into the 100s now. It's for the 15th of October, 2013. Now, today's episode is going to be kind of going to something that we get a lot of requests about, and that is we're going to talk about some Wirecast. We're going to go into software-based video switching and some new release from Telestream in Wirecast 5. So we're really excited about that. Now, also today we're going to talk a little bit about your opportunity to win Wirecast. Now, this is a studio version of Wirecast, still a $4.95 US price tag, so it's a great thing. So we're going to be talking about that soon. But we want to make sure you guys know that Studio Tech Live is brought to you by New Tech and also by our friends at BitGravity.
BitGravity provides the bandwidth for all the TTFN TV live streams. We continue to receive very positive comments on the quality of the live video, and this combined with outstanding service and support makes BitGravity a great company to work with. So if you're looking for someone to help with your live streaming requirements, check BitGravity out at www.bitgravity.com. Exactly.
So do check out BitGravity. Now, this week, as I mentioned, we've got a special guest in the studio, and I'd like to, I'm sorry, not in the studio, but actually joining us, and that I'd like to welcome Stephen Haywood. So, Stephen, thanks for joining us on short notice, and we look forward to learning a lot about Wirecast, but thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me, Vance. It's going to be a fun show.
There you go. So also, we do have Pushing the Buttons today as normal. Even though Mark is out on vacation for this week, we have the man with the plan. Peter is backstage doing all the button pushing. So Peter, thanks for coming in as always and pushing the buttons and talking to us. And that shot is great when you flip to it. Go right ahead.
It's good to be here again, Vance, and as the chat room would have seen, I've just ripped up the show notes because we've changed them as normal. No change, even with Mark away. We have our last 5-minute changes to what goes out. But it's going to be a great show and great to see Stephen here.
Exactly. So we always start the show with some news items. Now, we don't have very many this week at all, but a couple of things that we wanted to just bring forward. We talk a lot about 3D and 4K adoption and, all of these new technologies coming to the new media world. One of the things that caught my eye this week was the predicted adoption of 4K and how long it's going to take for it to have kind of a worldwide adoption. And the answer to that is, or the prediction for that, I guess I should say, is about 4 years. Now, there is an article on Rapid TV that says at least 4 years for 4K to become mass market proposition. Now, that means that we have, as we've talked about, bandwidth limitations, and you have issues of transporting the 4K video to and from different points. We've got some H.265 coming forward, but I thought it was very interesting. I didn't see anything on the adoption and how far out 3D TV was, but 4K TV being on about 48 months out is somewhat interesting to me. So, don't run out quite yet and buy all that 4K stuff unless you are ready to go with that. Now, one of the other things that I found this week was that our friends over at Teradek released something called the TeraPlay. Now, this is a new type monitoring system that allows you to monitor multiple devices from Teradek, and I'm going to show just a little bit here of one of these in action. So stand by.
My name's Paul Diaz. I am the camera and video tech here on set. I build and set all the cameras for each scene for our operators here. I also set up the video villages for the producers and executives to monitor what's going around on set. Prior to Teradek, when we build our video villages, we would do it all hardwired, hardline. I'd carry hundreds of feet of BNC, multiple field monitors, and set them up, sometimes 13, because we'll have 13 cameras going at a time. That's what made hardwired video villages kind of a hassle. Now we have the Teradek Cube system. We have one for each of our cameras, and it allows us to be way more mobile. We can be anywhere in a building and be able to monitor what's going on. No cables, so set up a video village is as easy as handing a producer an iPad and having them watch whichever camera they choose. This is our basic setup. It's an f800 camera. We put the cube on top. We could have them either in master mode or infrastructure. That way we can enable multi-view. Hand an iPad over to the producer or whoever needs to see what's going on, and they could easily just select whichever camera they wish to see, and then they're watching what's going on. Easy as that. If they've used an iPad before and they could navigate, say YouTube or any other video sharing site, it's as easy as tapping on what stream they want to watch. Aside from the camera department using the Cube, audio guys, especially if you're using boom mics, it's very helpful. They bring their iPod Touch and they leave it inside of their mixing bag. They could see if they have boom shadow or any other issues without having to interrupt a shot. The first time I set it up and they asked for a video village and I walked out and distributed iPads, the whole wow thing was, now I'm holding the scene in my hand and they're free to walk around. They're just like, well, I don't have to hover around a monitor. They could go off and be out of the way. I see this moving into other shows, especially in reality. There's so many different types. I know some of them are still, wiring in their video village, and they could be in a jungle or they could be, doing action sports outside where just running cable, sometimes is not an option. This is a great tool for shows like that. This kind of frees up everybody to actually do their job better, to be involved of the actual shot. A story producer could actually stay with the camera, with the talent, and direct what's going on.
Right, so that is from Teradek. So that was the latest, the TeraView. So if you're needing to look at a bunch of the cubes, we're using a cube, actually 4 cubes. So if you need to look at cubes, that's just kind of a neat little application. TeraView, you can get that for all different types of applications. Now, enough about the news. That's about all we have this week. Kind of a light news week. We want to touch back on our Wirecast competition. Now, Telestream has been very generous and is offering us the ability to do competition for giveaways of Wirecast. Now, this week's Wirecast is a studio version. It is of Wirecast 5 when it's released in the studio version. US pricing is $4.95 on this, so that's the value of the competition of the award that you're winning. And it's pretty simple for you to do. We're actually going to have another copy of this next week as well, so stay tuned if you don't win, but we will announce next week the winner of this, the one that enters this week. So here's the way you enter. Send an email to wirecast@studiotech.tv, okay? And in that, we need you to tell us where Telestream's corporate headquarters are located. That's it. That's all you have to do. So tell us where the corporate headquarters are located, and you're entered to win a $4.95 copy of Wirecast 5 as soon as it's released. Now, you can enter only by email. It's only one per person. We will draw the winner randomly, and we will be doing it at the end of next week's show on the 22nd of October. Okay? So everyone, find out the answer to that question. Send it in, wirecast@studiotech.tv, and we look forward to those entries. And there again, tune in next week for your chance to win as well. Now, before we jump into this week's show and kind of the heart of looking at Wirecast 5 and getting the hands-on with Steve, we kind of wanted to take a look back. Mark and I were playing around a little bit in the studio this past week. We had just a few minutes to try something. Now, last week we teased some with the JVC GY HM650. Now, this This in the U.S. is about a $6,000 camera. It's about 4,500 pounds in the UK. And the more and more Mark used this thing, he said, I really don't want to send it back. This thing is just amazing. And he said, reprogram your cube and let's see what happens. So Peter's going to run a video that we recorded and take a look at what we were able to do. I'm going to talk over the video. We had some kind of audio delay issues with it that we're still working out. But Peter, go ahead and run that video that we were streaming, and I'll just kind of explain what's happening.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so Mark took the JVC, and he's actually got the JVC connected to his wireless router or router, and there's no wires connected to it. But the interesting thing is he's streaming this video from the JVC camera wirelessly through his network system there at the studio, but it's coming to me in instant high def directly to my cube 4,000 plus miles away, and the latency was almost, it was very, very, very low. So you see Mark panning around, and he's walking. He can't really tell what's happening here that much, but he's actually showing the audio rack, and he's saying, "Look, guys, we've turned off our transmit cube, and so we don't have it on. So I'm just transmitting directly out of the camera." That's exactly what he was doing. So coming straight back over to my cube, and I was getting this video and just completely amazed that he was walking around. So I said, Mark, you got on the studio lights, so just show around a little bit inside the studio with this camera. And still wireless, so nothing connected, no belt pack or anything. And gives you a pretty good indication of the video quality. Now, in real fast pans, we tried it in a couple of different qualities, and we found, I think this was I want to say a 1.5 meg. And we tried it a little bit different. Now, if you pan really fast and got away from
can I just
the
interject
Wi-Fi
there?
signal.
What you can see on that monitor now
Sure,
is,
go ahead.
is the signal coming back from Vance, having been sent over the wire to Carolina and then coming back on the
handrail
cube. So that is
way
the
up on
camera
the edge of the
coming back
cliff.
on that monitor.
And he brings that in. We wanted to see what kind of resolution and detail that we could get from, the tips of the bushes, and it was a little bit, there you go, now it pops back into focus and you can see. Peter, you can speak on how far that is away. Pretty good ways, huh?
Yeah, that must be, 30, 40 feet? Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, at least that. So that, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So, yeah. So there again, that's kind of us just playing around a little bit, showing what that JVC HM650 will do. Now, the BBC, as Peter mentioned, went out and bought a whole bunch of these things for news gathering, and we really, really like this camera a lot. Now, what Mark's about to do here in just a second is he's going to press one button on this camera, and the stream is going to just pause. It's just going to go down. So he's got his finger on the button, and he's about to press it any second now, and you'll see it just stops. There, he's reaching for it and pushes it. So there you go. Just kind of neat. You can certainly change the rate at what you're streaming based on your Wi-Fi connection, and it's really, really, really neat. So. Kind of some good stuff there on the JVC HM650.
I can see why Mark's fallen in love with that.
Yeah, it's amazing, Peter. I don't know if he took it on vacation or not. He was kind of contemplating, do I take it on vacation, do I not? And I said, well, go ahead and take it, Mark. You may find it's obviously a little bulky for a vacation camera, but I don't think he could put it down the other day. He texted me and he said, oh, you're going to have to see how this thing looks and how it works. So I don't know if he ended up taking it or not, but great camera. If anyone's looking for one, that HM650 looks like it's going to be a real winner. We are going to have a full Studio Tech episode up on the 650. We may have some more in-depth examples of how we did that to the Cube with full audio. It was kind of an impromptu thing, so that's kind of the deal there. Well, we're going to jump over real quick before we get into Wirecast, and we have to, as we do every single week, we have to thank the sponsors of Studio Tech, and we would like to thank NewTek and their support of Studio Tech Live. Now, NewTek is a worldwide company. They're based here in the U.S. in San Antonio, but they have a worldwide presence in Europe and all around. If you're looking for any kind of video switcher all in one box, please check out the TriCaster line from NewTek. Now, last week we talked about scopes, and we did some green screen stuff. And on our green screen, we got some questions on how do you actually get the right key. Now, there's a white paper that NewTek released, and you can check that out at pages.newtek.com/scopes white paper. This is an article talking about what are scopes and how to use them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a little propeller head stuff, but it's very, very interesting. So if you have any questions on how to use scopes, do green screen, do chroma keying, et cetera, please check that out. And again, we would like to thank NewTek and their line of the TriCasters for the support of Studio Tech Live and Studio Tech as well. So thanks to NewTek. Now, we're going to jump right into this week's show. Now, as we teased in the beginning, we're going to be talking about Wirecast 5. Now, Wirecast 5 is something that a lot of folks have been waiting for. I know that there were multiple upgrades in 4, some tweaks here and there, but 5 is a big change. And we have one of Telestream's employees joining us. Some of you guys, a lot of you guys may know Steve from the Tech Buzz, but Steve is joining us today from Telestream, and he is. I'll let Steve, you tell us exactly what you do with Telestream, and just kind of lead us into 5, and we'll jump right straight into 5 here in a second. So what exactly are you doing with Telestream in the education side?
So right now I work as a Wirecast application specialist, where I do a lot of workflows for customers and trying to get them to understand what Wirecast capabilities are within the confines that they are used to for their business or for their school or whatever it is. So I specialize in working out those workflows with the pre-sales customers, and even I work in some of the support realm as well as doing some of the things here with the show and tell, that type of thing. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. Get a lot of hands-on.
All right, that's great. All right, well, so I guess the first question that may come up is, what kind of operating system? Say I'm a Mac guy, I'm a Windows guy. Does that really matter with Wirecast 5? Does that matter? Or we can use it in both Windows and Mac. So talk a little bit about the two different operating systems and how they work, how Wirecast 5 works in each operating system.
So one of the big things that everybody asks when they're looking for a software solution is it agnostic to the operating system? Can I run it on Mac or PC? Well, I'm happy to say yes. With Telestream's Wirecast, you can run it on Mac or PC, and a lot of folks want to know what is the benefit of running it on a Mac versus running it on a PC. And there really isn't a difference between running it on a Mac or PC that I've seen. I know Wirecast originally was created for the Mac and kind of ported over to the Windows side of things. I like to look at it more. There's at the current present moment, there's a lot more third-party options in using Apple scripts, as a lot of you know from myself using it for the last couple of years. Having the ability to customize it, use Apple scripts to control. Mark was one that created an Apple script using a Korg Nano controller to basically control your Wirecast shots. And since then, the industry has gotten a lot of independent developers that have created iPad applications to mirror the interface or kind of use the Wirecast SDK that's out there that people have been playing with to kind of create these different applications. And with Wirecast 5, it's going to kind of explode even more. They're going to allow developers to use the open API that they're putting out to have cool new things designed, as well as cool new things with support of different capturing devices that the masses have asked about. Different companies like Aja, Blackmagic, Matrox, Osprey, all these different companies to allow you to pretty much customize your own broadcasting streaming box. So that's one of the really, really big cool features, I guess you would call it a feature, on the release of Wirecast 5.
Okay, so we're getting a lot more integration all throughout the industry, which I think is great. So, all right, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so how about the power of the machine? I mean, do we have to go spend $5,000 on a Windows machine if that's our option? Do we have to get the Mac Pro, the biggest and best and everything, or can we just go with, say, an off-the-shelf Windows PC running, I guess, 7? Or Windows 8. I guess 7's a little bit harder to find now. Windows 8, and say a Mac Mini that's midline. Now we have plenty of discussions about the RAM, and we always talk about try to get the fastest processor that you can afford when you're doing any kind of video, especially switching video and recording. But any limitations there as far as powerhouse machines? Let's kind of say, okay, we've got X number of dollars to spend. What's the options there?
So one of the first things that I ask customers all the time is, what's your budget? And what are you going to do? Standard definition, high definition? Because believe it or not, folks are still doing standard definition. So I always kind of like to know what I'm getting into before I kind of progress. But my rule of thumbs has been, now this is just me saying this, I always say buy the most bang that you can get for your dollar. If your budget is $5,000, then obviously you want to try to get the highest possible machine that you can get for that type of money to future-proof yourself to an extent. And we get a lot of customers that may be doing standard definition now, or maybe using HDV, but they are looking to do HD in the future, true HD, using HD SDI or using HDMI with some of the capture cards that are supported. So I like to recommend something at least like a high-powered i7 with 6 to 8 gigabytes of RAM, at least 1 to 2 gigabytes of graphic memory. And, we could sit here and debate all day between ATI or NVIDIA. I kind of lean more toward NVIDIA. I'm a big NVIDIA fan, but there are people out there that would prefer ATI, and that's completely acceptable. I'm one of those guys that also like to run all my programs on a solid-state drive as opposed to running it on a moving device such as the old-school SATA hard drives, and I run a secondary SATA hard drive just mainly to store all my elements from different applications, videos, graphics, those sort of things, so I can have that fastest read-write possible between the operating system, the application, and the components. Because, I mean, let's face it, your computer's only as fast as your slowest components. So a lot of times when I'm working and helping folks build a computer that'll meet their needs, I kind of try to work within those confines. And some of the cool factors going into Wirecast 5 is the brand new X264 encoder. A lot that are familiar with Wirecast from the past, the H.264 encoder, the VP6 encoder, it really knocks down your CPU load using that X264 encoder. Just to kind of give you an example, I've been running a 720p stream for my rerun machine with the 2 other applications running the 4 separate CDNs at 720p, 30 frames a second, a little under a meg a piece just for reruns. And I've been sitting anywhere from 55 to 60% CPU using that X264 encoder. Whereas if I were to use the H.264 encoder, I would have buried that i5 processor on that Mac Mini. And this is one of the, I believe it's the late 2012 model, one of the brand new ones with the Intel 5000 graphics in it. So, I mean, it performs very, very well under that type of environment. So I'm really excited about the X264 encoder. For those that have been running Wirecast 4 for the last couple of years and you're kind of contemplating, well, should I pick up this upgrade? At least from my standpoint, that feature alone is worth the upgrade if you're somebody like myself who wants to get out there to multiple CDNs to get that drive-by traffic or have the ability to encode using the X264 encoder.
Right. Okay. So that's great news. Now, one of the things, and you almost touched on it, is CPU load. So we both remember that, like you said, when you go from standard to high def, if you were one of the early adopters to go from standard def to high def, the very first thing you noticed was CPU loading, and it was just a lot of different video switching applications, whether they were hardware or software based, struggled a lot with all the math, all the computations that you had to do. Now, I know that Telestream has been right on the cutting edge of getting those computations to where it's shared. So I think in 5 there's multi-threading, I believe, and maybe even you'll have to kind of help me with this, some sharing of the CPU and GPU, so you're not loading your CPU down as may have been in some of the older versions, and some kind of shared resources to keep that utilization of the processor down, meaning maybe fans are not going to ramp up to the maximum RPM and everything start getting really, really hot. Is that kind of the way things are going in 5 and maybe some future releases?
Well, what I can say right now is currently that Wirecast is utilizing the GPU with Wirecast 5. It's rendering using the YUV color space on the GPU. So it does pay to have a good GPU with this version of Wirecast and have some of that offload of the processing with it. And so, a lot of the older versions of Wirecast, it really didn't utilize it as much, but it was necessary in some cases. So that's something that Wirecast is now utilizing a lot more, trying to bring in means, because a lot of things are more graphical intense as we get into motion, lower thirds, motion backgrounds for those that like chroma keying. So you have to have a way to kind of offset that a little bit. So my main Wirecast machine is an 8-core Mac Pro with hyper-threading. It's the dual Xeon. I think it's the late 2009. Don't quote me on that, but it's the 8-core machine, and I can run flawless 4 simultaneous streams at 720p at 1.5 meg without any issues. Now, I have a 512 graphics, which was the one that kind of came with the machine. And so over the last couple of weeks, I've been really researching to get that up to really fully utilize Wirecast 5 in the GPU integration with it. So it's something I've known for a while, but I kind of, that's why I'm saying to folks, you really want to kind of push forward and try to get a higher end GPU to work with your system.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Well, okay. So, do you have any? Can you tell us the biggest change? I know we have a lot of our viewers that have used version all the way back to real old versions, but talk a little bit about what's the big highlights. Now, everyone that watches our show each week, the one thing that Mark Johnson has asked for many, many years, or one thing that's been really frustrating to him, I did a couple of different reviews of some other devices. The very first question that always comes out of Mark's mouth is, when you hit the enter button, does it flip program in preview? And I don't know when the hang-up was and I have to agree with him that it was a little frustrating that the older versions of Wirecast wouldn't do what we call the flip-flop between program and preview. It's a very small thing, but that was one of the things. So I think when Mark found that out, I believe at IBC, he went by the booth and, says, hey, show me everything Wirecast 5 does, and they went over everything. And that was the very first question. So other than the flip-flop on program and preview, hit some of the high points of 5 that people would be looking for from, say, 4 or even older versions.
So, yeah, we're going to go into that because there's been a complete UI overhaul. And I just want to point this out according to with the whole live preview swap. We have to remember this, that Wirecast was developed for the novice. It was developed for the person that really didn't know a lot about broadcasting. So it's really designed to keep things simple so that anybody can sit down and create a webcast and get it out to the world. So a lot of folks that I've come to find out, because I was in that same boat and wondering why we don't have, it's taken kind of up to now to kind of get that live preview swap. And it's just a very few folks, and when I say few, I mean, if you look at the grand scheme of things, that really use the preview. I was shocked and blown away at the fact that a lot of people do not use the preview window in Wirecast. They just use the program and they put auto live all the time. I'm one of those guys. I like to preview my shot before pushing it live. So it was kind of a shock, but I'm going to kind of take you on a little tour of the interface, the brand new interface here of Wirecast 5. I think this is one of the biggest radicalist changes to Wirecast as we know it. And fortunately, I've had the privilege of working with this for quite a while, and I've really grown to love this interface. And it's easy on the eyes, and it's very, very customizable. And those that are familiar, you remember Wirecast 4. A lot of the key things are still there, like your stream and record buttons in the upper left corner. They've just been migrated to an actual button rather than a Wirecast icon. You still have your readouts, like I like to see, the frames per second, kilobits per second, CPU, memory, bandwidth. Those are some of the things that you currently still have, as well as at the bottom, you still have your transitions that you can choose the different types of transitions that you want to use within Wirecast if you so choose to. I like to keep it between cut and smooth, and then obviously your take button is here as well. So some of the big things in the interface, as well as now we have some lights that light up so that lets you know what's in preview and what's in program, and it corresponds down here as well. So if I pull up, like let's say the local desktop presenter, the light will match whatever's in preview or program. So it kind of helps the user to kind of get familiar with what is in preview and what is in program. One of the other cool features with the interface that I really like is you're watching this show and you're going, wow, I really wish I could see. I see he's got those thumbnails, in real time, but they're really awesome. They're hard to see. Well, with Wirecast 5 new UI, it gives you the ability, if you click on the left arrow up or down, it gives you the ability to scale that layer, as the folks that have come to use Wirecast know, the master layers, as you will. It gives you the ability to scale it and see it in real time. Those important layers that you really, really want folks to that are running it, or yourself, to really be paying mind to. Like my lower thirds, I really don't need to see them kind of on the larger side. So if I really wanted to, I could even move them out of the way so I don't see them at all. So I think these are really, really cool features to kind of hide different master layers that maybe you're not utilizing during your broadcast, and just keep what's important right in front of you to maximize the usability of the program and minimize all the distractions that possibly could be there. So I think that's one of the really, really cool features. And just for Studio Tech here, we're going to demonstrate that live preview swap within Wirecast. Up under Switch, you can see that it now has a toggle for live preview swaps. So now when I click, I'm just using a built-in webcam on this MacBook Air. You'll see we get the nice live preview swap, or the Mark Johnson feature, as it's been come to known. Things that they're doing within the interface now, besides the updated UI, is you're getting a lot more of the underneath the. Let's go under the preferences here and take a look. This was that render using the YUV color space on the GPU. You can set that. Some of you may have some legacy cameras. You can now choose if you want to use those drivers. Under the performance now, a lot have recommended and have been wanting to have the ability to do 60 frames a second for the live preview, and so for the live thumbnail. So it gives you the ability to not only toggle it on and off if you want it or if you don't want it, but also choose how many frames per second you'd like to see it run at within Wirecast's live preview. And so I think that's something a lot of our customers and our user base has really wanted to see, was the 60 frames per second. Now, one of the other things that folks have been asking about, which I don't have any capture cards connected to it, but with the Blackmagic Deck Link and the Blackmagic Intensity cards, you're now able to output program out to one of those inputs or outputs on your card. So let's say you're using a Deck Link Quad, which has 4 HD SDI inputs. Let's say you're only going to use 2, but you want to use the other 2 for program out, you can now do that under, it would show up under here as another menu choice to output to one of those cards and send your program out to it, which is really, really, really cool for those of you that run a bigger studio and you need the ability for folks to really see what is being on in real time. One of the other key features that I think is really, really huge with Wirecast 5 is the web stream plugin. Now, as you guys can see, as Vance alluded to earlier, I have my own show, and I'm showing what we're actually doing is we're pulling in my live feed directly from BitGravity using the web stream plugin. So you can simply add it up here under the drop-down, under the sources. We're going to go in and take a look at where it's actually located. But in the web stream plugin, I'm bringing it in via HTTP. I just left everything to auto-detect, and I pasted in the URL or the URI right into this little box, and I clicked connect, clicked save settings, and it immediately tells you what you're outputting that pre-recorded in, what codec you're using, what audio codec you're using, how much bandwidth the video is using, how much bandwidth the audio is using, the bit rate, and some of the folks are saying, okay, well, that's awesome. What would I use this for? So one of the things that I did, Vance, was when I was out at NAB, I was able to stream using the live view to BitGravity. So obviously the BitGravity feed is going to take up a lot of that bandwidth on the live view. So I wanted to utilize some of the bandwidth that I had at home. So in the early infancy stages of the WebStream plugin, I took that WebStream and I plugged it into Wirecast at home to stream out to the other CDNs that I wanted to using my home bandwidth. And one of your community members, Joe DeMax, actually sat down and wrote an Apple script for me to where from my iPhone, I could send an email to myself to start and stop Wirecast remotely and be able to toggle and send the program out feed to those destinations. So essentially the WebStream plugin has now become your syndication, your broadcast truck, just in a little plugin. So I think a lot of users who do a lot of on-location sports, on-location events like red carpet events, you could be in the studio and pull a feed, a live feed from a remote location, bring it in and say, hey, we're going to cut to Joe who's on the red carpet with one of the celebrities. We're going to cut to that now. And you cut to a live view feed or something, a Teradek feed, anything like that. And it basically also gives you the ability to bring in virtually any IP cameras as long as you have the protocol of HTTP, RTSP, RTMP, or MMS. So that's just kind of a little sneak peek into the UI. We also, for those that have been wondering, playing video back, as you can see, it's running very, very fluid within the interface here. We have improved H.264 playback. It delivers a smoother playback of pre-recorded H.264 videos in Wirecast. And many of you have written in and said, hey, I recorded videos with Wirecast, and I immediately throw it back in Wirecast, and it just stutters and staggers, and that's not the case anymore in Wirecast 5. You put it back in Wirecast 5, and it just plays back with a tremendous playback. We don't have any issues with that going in there. So that was one of the big things that many folks had asked for. Some of you gamers out there, this was a big feature for you. So you're seeing I'm bringing in what's now called the local desktop presenter. And if you look under the drop-down menu, you have the local desktop presenter and the remote desktop presenter. The local desktop presenter is pulling in at 60 frames a second, which a lot of our gamers have asked because they wanted to minimize Wirecast, have it playing with their game, and be able to stream their gameplay out to twitch.tv. So that's a great feature, but then how do we take care of the latency? So for strategic gameplay. So what Telestream has done is under your output settings or your broadcast settings, as you may have recalled it from 4, it gives you the ability to delay the stream up to as many seconds. You just input it right into here. You could put it like, I want to delay it 60 seconds. So that gives your viewers that may be playing with you a fair advantage. So you're not going to be, as I've put it in the past with playing Call of Duty, my nickname became Respawn because I was always getting shot. So this gives the person that's streaming a fair edge, so they're not constantly getting killed because people are watching the stream. So this is something that a lot of folks have really been asking for in Wirecast that are gamers. So if you're a gamer out there, you're going to find that this is really, really cool. And some of these features I do want to point out are only available in Wirecast Pro, so keep that in mind. And we're going to have a little, when Wirecast drops, we're just polishing it up. It'll be ready to go soon. And you'll be able to see a great comparison between the two. Vance, you guys are big users of the Teradek Cube. So the cross-platform Teradek plugin that we now have with Wirecast is giving you the ability to integrate with the Teradek Cube, Bond, and Sputnik, is now available for both Mac and PC. I think you'll be pretty excited about that, which adds the flexible and economical live streaming options for easier capture of remote sources and more scalable pushing of local sources. So I think you guys might want to play around with that and kind of give us some feedback, since you guys have been really, really utilizing the Teradek products.
Yeah, we actually would, Steve. And, I had a couple of questions. Are there any number limits to the amount of the web streams that you can bring in? Because, some people were asking in the chat room, how could I use this? And I think that you even, before we could come back and ask, I think you addressed and said, just like you were talking about with the live view, I think that's great. The Teradek products, being able to bring those into your production, anytime you can get multiple inputs in, and it's easy to get those inputs in with the plugins, like you're saying for the Teradek Cube. We're getting a question about the video, but any of these things you can get into your production is great, because a year ago, 2 years ago, we were limited to having to either run cables or to figure out a way to do capture programs on the Mac, and we do screen capture and we wouldn't have audio, and it was really confusing and convoluted to get inputs in. So if you can grab inputs, like you said, from a remote location that maybe you're streaming it back in, I think that's great. But how about are there any number limitations to the amount you can get other than the number of inputs going into Wirecast, either in the studio or the Pro version? Let's talk about that first.
So the WebStream plugin is only available on the Pro model of Wirecast. And as far as limitations go, you're only limited by your network, obviously, and your bandwidth/hardware. So basically, because it's a network type of input using RTMP, RTSP, MMS, and HTTP, you're really not limited by, Wirecast has it to where you can add as many sources as you possibly can bring in. So you could essentially have 10, 15, 20, as long as your CPU is able to handle it and your network speed, you're going to be able to bring that into Wirecast. And so, which I think is also something that's phenomenal for folks that are doing like a studio like you guys are, but also bringing in maybe, say, remote feeds from all over the country and maybe even all over the world. And so it gives you that opportunity to really have that all cinched into Wirecast. And you made mention about, somebody had said about the video being supported. We're in the process right now of restructuring all of our supported devices. And so you're going to start seeing more and more devices supported in the next couple of weeks and upcoming months as we get and compile that with QA and get a list up on the website. So make sure you keep checking back as Telestream is constantly updating and keeping you informed of all the latest and new toys that get added to our supported list.
Right. Okay. Well, that's really, really good. You briefly touched on the difference between Studio and Pro. Now, I remember that audio delay was one of the big things in Pro back in 4. You could not delay the audio in the Studio version, but you could in the Pro. You said that the WebStream plugin is not available on the Studio version, but it is available on the Pro. Any big other things? There's a lot of similarities. I think that the desktop, the application itself, the whole interface is essentially the same, but you just lose some of the functionality. That's across the board pretty much all the way. But any other real big kickers if I was trying to decide between 500 US and 1,000 US, which I think are, are very fairly priced and, a really good deal, what would really make me kick over to the pro version? Web stream, audio delay. Give me something else that may be a difference in the two.
Sure. So currently, IP cameras are a pro feature, which then the web stream plugin kind of merges with that, because obviously now you'd be able to bring into virtually any IP source. That's going to be in the pro. The Teradek Cube connections, that's all going to be pro. We have a lot of sports customers, and so pro is needed for them because of the live scoreboard integration that we have built into Wirecast, but also one of the third parties that have partnered with us, which you can check out on Telestream's website. That is also available in the pro feature. Also, Pipeline, another Telestream product, being able to bring that into Wirecast. And a lot of our businesses, a lot of our higher end users, and they want that Pipeline feature, being able to bring that in. That's another pro feature as well. And so as you touched on, the audio inspector, up to a second delay, you can delay the audio. Some folks still haven't gotten to the point where they're using a audio mixer, so they're more utilizing Wirecast built-in audio mixer that's kind of in the actual software, and so they need to delay. Sometimes they're using a device that maybe has a sync issue, or they're using maybe a USB connection, they're running out of bandwidth. Sometimes the delay is needed depending on if it's a wireless solution or not. So that's also in the pro. Also having the ability for virtual sets. A lot of folks, they want pre-made virtual sets. That's available in our pro model as well. Whereas studio, you'll be able to chroma key, but you're going to have to use your own backgrounds, graphics, things like that in order to utilize your own rendition of a virtual set. We have a complete breakdown currently of 4.3.1, which is the latest build until 5 obviously ships, of the differences between Pro and standard def or standard version of Wirecast. The VS4 is another Pro capture card with the ISO recording that's tightly integrated with Wirecast. So there's a lot of different things for just about everybody, to where you could take a look at Pro and say, at least for me, even with the WebStream plugin, the X264 encoder, those two huge features for me would be enough to upgrade to Wirecast 5 from 4. But some folks may sit there and go, well, I really need live scoreboards because I'm doing sports and things like that. So I think we packed a lot into the Pro, where we give the user kind of a nice checklist to see what they possibly need under Pro, and I think there's something under there for everyone.
All right, I think that's great. So, okay, I think that Wirecast and Telestream has hit a really good niche in the market. This is not a super expensive application, but it's very, very powerful. One of the first things that I noticed about Wirecast a couple of years ago, or maybe a little bit before that, was it seemed pretty basic to begin with, but the further you would dive into it, there would be hidden features that you were like, oh, well, that's what you can do, or you can do that by doing this. 5's interface, I like the way it's customizable. Like you said, if you don't need the lower thirds, then just minimize them, get them out of the way, rescale your input so you can see before you actually do the switch. How about after the sale training? Or let's say that I'm someone that may be using either a really basic program, or I'm going to branch off onto my own and do something different. How would I get training on Wirecast? Does Telestream offer online training? You guys do for hire training? Talk a little bit about how we would learn the new version of 5 and to become familiar with it, and to get all the intricacies of the complications or the things you can do that are really in-depth, because it is a very in-depth program. Even if it doesn't look like it on the surface, it does a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wirecast, Telestream, we offer free email support currently, and Telestream is constantly making videos and tutorials, as well as I've been doing that over the last the last couple of years making tutorials and putting them out for folks. And so what we've integrated right now currently is a paid support model. So you're guaranteed to get a call back within 24 hours. You get phone support, and we walk you through. So if you have what we call premium support, for $99 for Wirecast Studio for a year, you can get premium support. And if you have Wirecast Pro, it's $199, and that's annually. And so you'll be able to get 8 business hours of premium support, and for the year, and it's priority, especially even with email. A lot of folks, well, they don't really want to do phone support. They're on site. They need a quick answer. They just need somebody to bounce something off. They get priority. So if you're somebody that's not a premium support person, you send an email. It could be a day, 2 days, depending on our caseload. But if you're premium support, you get it, which is not really a lot of money. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of companies in some of the other avenues that I work with where they want to charge a lot more for their premium support, and their callback time isn't within that amount of time, or you have to talk to a reseller, or you have to talk. I mean, so Telestream's really going the extra mile with its customers to ensure that they get their project or their broadcast or whatever it is that they're trying to do, get it done and out the door in as quick amount of time as possible. And so having premium support, offering a free knowledge base, you can visit that at kb.telestream.net for folks that really want to maybe research it themselves. We also offer the forums, where there's a great moderator there, Craig Seaman. He is in there to answer your questions. You can go to forums.telestream.net. So we've put some different tools out there for folks to get the information they need, and also working on getting more and more videos out there for folks who are like me, that need a visual and hands-on way of learning. And so we're in the process of adding more and more to our repertoire.
Gotcha. Well, the forum, I think, is one of the big things. I got kind of roped into the forum. We actually have Craig in the chat room today, and Craig is one of the moderators in the forum that seems to answer everyone's question. I don't know how he has time to do anything else other than the forum responses, but we would like to all say thanks to Craig Seaman, and because he just spends hours and hours and days and months and years in that forum. So that's certainly one of the free supports that I've experienced myself, and Craig's answered a number of the questions I've had over the years, so that's great stuff. Well, Steve, we've got to kind of wrap up today, but I guess to finalize this, what are we looking at ship date and release date for both Studio and Pro timing-wise? When can we get our hands on this? If we're right on the fence, ready to purchase something, talk to us about when we can get it, and it's available for download and purchase.
Well, just like any brand new car in the showroom, you have to put the final touches on it, polish it up a little bit before it goes out the door, and that's kind of what we're doing right now with Wirecast. So the release is any time now. That's as most as I'm going to tell you right now, just to be excited. But we didn't talk about price, and for those existing Wirecast users, it's going to cost you for Studio $129, which Telestream has never charged for an upgrade since version 3, when they went from, I believe it was 2.7, 2.8, back when I was using it, up to 3.0. And now there is I thank for all the new features. It's well deserved. $129 for Studio, and I believe it's $295 for Pro and the upgrade. And so it's very, very, very good price for anybody that wants to upgrade to this. I'd encourage everybody, just based on what we showed today, and it's a great way to get it. But keep watching. Follow Telestream at Telestream on Twitter, at Wirecast on Twitter for any of the breaking news when it comes out, and you'll be the first to know when Wirecast drops. But know that it's going to be very, very soon.
I think that's great pricing, Stephen. Thank you for bringing that up, because they are looking after the folks that have purchased it in the past, and I think that's very good. Support after the sale, good upgrade prices, and a really good product to begin with, and a lot of cutting-edge things. I think we've shown a lot of those today. There are a lot more we couldn't get to today, and we certainly apologize for that. But, Steve, I'd like to thank you for coming in and showing us this little sneak preview of Wirecast 5. Everyone hopefully will be able to get it very, very soon. And it's just a powerhouse of a program. So thanks for joining us and taking a few minutes out of your time today to help us with that.
No, I appreciate being here. Thank you for the opportunity. And we look forward to more and more releases from Telestream.
Yeah, thanks very much, Steve. A lot of excitement in the chat room. It's actually buzzing tonight. So thank you very much for coming in and giving us that insight.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Exactly. Now you can follow Stephen at the Tech Buzz on Twitter. That's the Tech Buzz on Twitter. You can follow me at Vance Willis. You can follow Mark Johnson at TTFN TV. I would like to thank Peter for doing an excellent job switching this evening in Mark's absence. And we look forward to everyone. Please send in any pictures you have of your studio, any short videos. Send us a link to YouTube, anything you've got. We like seeing them, small ones, large ones, whatever you've got. We certainly don't want to forget about any of the folks that are just starting off, just like we were a few years ago. It's been a big learning experience. Continue to follow us on YouTube. If you watch us on YouTube, please try to join in on Tuesdays. We do live show every Tuesday. You can join in the chat room. As Peter said, it's been very, very active today. You get a lot of questions answered. We have a lot of professional folks that are in the field and hang around with some really good questions and comments. So please join us soon. And that wraps up this week's episode of Studio Tech Live. We'll see you next week at the same time. So everyone have a great week. See ya.